Are we all said and done? Going once, going twice. Can you really buy a property before auction day?
Well, today we're gonna go through all the things that you need to know before putting an offer prior to auction to increase your chances of the offer being accepted. So why don't we dive right in?
In Sydney and Melbourne at the moment, the auction clearance rates are over 70%. So a lot of properties are getting sold at auction, but a lot of people just aren't confident and don't want to go to auction. So Nathan, we got asked this question this week. Can you make an offer on a property before it goes to auction?
Well, you definitely can make an offer before auction. However, there are a few things you want to be aware of before making that offer and making sure that you give yourself every opportunity of the offer being accepted prior to going to auction.
So let's think about the mentality. When a property is going to auction, the agent's trying to sell the property for the top dollar. So they want it to go to auction to have some competition. B, again, from the agent's perspective, they want to have the campaign wrapped up in 4 weeks and not have to wait around for, subject to finance approval and building and pest. So really it's in the agent's and often in the seller's interest to sell the property at auction rather than take an offer before that's going to be subject to extra conditions. So it's worth being aware of this.
So prior to making your pre-auction offer, we've got 3 tips here that you can follow that might help increase your chances of the offer being accepted. The first is doing your homework. So making sure you understand the property and what it's worth. Don't go in really lowball trying to get a good deal or anything like that, especially if you know there's competition. So doing your homework would involve going to the open house, understanding how many people are actually visiting, having interest and showing interest in the property,
and getting an understanding of what properties have recently sold in the area. Again, if you're looking at sales that happened a year ago, 2 years ago, it's not going to be indicative of what the property would and should be valued at today. So you really need to understand that research before you even make that offer. Doing your homework also includes doing all your searches before. So you need to be prepared to have spent money on a building and pest inspection, even your solicitor and council searches to make sure everything's ready to go before you put your offer on, and especially before auction day comes around.
As well as that, when you're doing your homework, you need to understand what your plan of attack is. Are you actually still going to go to auction? Which means you might not put your very best offer down and you might test the vendor and see what their interest is. Or are you not going to auction and you're definitely 100% not keen to even venture down that path? So you might put your best and only offer in. The key here with doing your homework is completely understand everything about the property, what you think it's worth, manage the risks. So make sure you've done your building and pest, all your searches on the property prior to doing that, so that you can go in with the best terms as possible on the contract to give yourself every opportunity of getting the bid accepted. So the second tip to getting your offer accepted prior to auction is making time your greatest weapon. What we mean by that is if you know the auction is within 2 weeks time, so it's on Saturday in 2 weeks and it's Saturday today, and you know you've got 2 weeks up your sleeve, you want to make sure if you're putting any finance clauses in the contract that the finance clause is well and truly completed prior to the auction. What we mean by that is you don't want to be putting a 21-day finance clause and the auction's coming up in 2 weeks. It is well and truly not going to be accepted or even looked at, because they're going to more be likely to give the auction a crack because that's unconditional terms. So the first one there is make sure if you're putting any terms in the contract, they're all met prior to the auction taking place. The second one is putting a time limit on when your offer will expire. What we mean by that, once again, if it's Saturday, you can say you've got till 5 p.m. of today to come back to me to say yes or no you want this offer. The reason why you want to do that is you don't want to give them time to think about it and really mull over it, whether you might give it to them today on Saturday, they come back to you on Monday or Tuesday next week, where they've had an opportunity to consider their options. So use time as your greatest weapon, and these 2 small little things might give you a higher opportunity and chance of the offer being accepted. So the third is always be willing to walk away, and especially as we talked about in doing your homework, if you are planning on going to the auction, well, be prepared to walk away and turn up on auction day ready to rock and roll. So it's important not to get too emotionally involved in the negotiations, especially if you are planning on going to the auction, or if you're making offers and they're saying to you, no, we want to see an unconditional offer before we even look at your offer, then be prepared to walk away, because chances are you might find that they're really not that interested. They just want an unconditional offer to set the reserve prior to auction. So always be prepared to walk away, especially if you're finding that you're not getting much movement in the negotiation.
Yeah, Nathan, the reality is when you're making an offer before auction, most sellers are just gonna wait until auction and take their chances. In other words, if you're making an offer a week out, they're potentially gonna use that to understand, well, maybe that's where they should set their reserve price. So you're making an offer, you're showing your cards, Nathan's gonna offer $500,000 for a property, and maybe the seller only thought the property was worth $450,000. Now they're gonna move their reserve price, and this is the reality with making an offer before auction. The agent's gonna use that to know, well, Nathan's here, and the other offer we had before auction's here, so I've got two people that can play off each other to get them up at auction. So our last tip is just be careful. Keep your cards close to your chest. Don't try and go with your best and final offer because they're gonna end up using that on auction day and potentially pump up the reserve price.
And as well as that, understand what the clearance rates are in your area. So if you're in an area that traditionally has a very low clearance rate on auctions, well, you can use that to your advantage. As well as that, if you are a registered bidder at auction and the property doesn't sell and you're the highest bidder, you're the first in line to renegotiate and try and get that dialogue happening to come to an agreement on a purchase price.
We've got a bunch of other videos on buying at auction and the auction mentality. Check them out below. They're gonna be really helpful if you're looking at buying a property at auction this Saturday.
So that's it for today, guys. If you've liked the video, please like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.